Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're working with a stack of, well, really personal and traumatic sources, memoirs, interviews, some very cryptic collected accounts.
And we're going to try and pull the threads of truth from them.
We are. The investigation we're looking at today it's a fascinating and frankly disturbing one.
It is. Our sources are all centered on this series of mysterious, you could say catastrophic, events that happened in Madison, Wisconsin, way back in 1966.
And it all follows this one narrator's decades-long search for answers about something he just calls a dark matter.
Yeah, a dark matter that completely derailed the lives of his wife and his closest high school friends.
So our mission here is to understand how this one moment of occult transformation, which was orchestrated by a pretty charismatic fraud,
Right.
how that moment connected directly to an ongoing and officially unsolved series of homicides.
The notorious Milwaukee Ladykiller murders.
Exactly, and how, at the end of the day, it introduced something genuinely demonic into this group of teenagers. We're diving into a reality that basically ruined 5 young people.
And the breakthrough for the narrator, the thing that really kicked this whole investigation off again, it didn't come from a library or an archive.
No.
It came from a really visceral, jarring experience in a Chicago coffee shop years and years after 1966.
Okay, let's unpack that opening scene because it really does set the tone for the absolute terror that's just under the surface of this whole story. The narrator's just sitting there in a coffee shop and he sees this panicky, muttering homeless man being physically carried out.
By 2 big college kids, right?
Yeah, 2 big athletic guys. And the man is rigid, he's trembling, and he's just repeating one single kind of archaic word over and over. Obstreperous. It's so chilling because, as the narrator points out, the man, he calls him Mr. Obstreperous, he's clearly lost any connection to what the word actually means.
Right, which is just noisy or disorderly.
Yeah. For him, it's not a word anymore. It's a mantra. It's like a desperate, protective chant against some kind of threat that only he can see.
And for the narrator, seeing those terrified, bloodshot eyes and just hearing that mechanical repetition, it triggers something.
A flash of recognition, a really painful one. It's this profound grief for someone who'd been locked away for 40 years.
His childhood friend, Howard Hootie Bly.
Hootie Bly. A kid who was defined by his photographic memory. I mean, a memory so total that he absorbed every single word he ever read onto what the narrator called an endless scroll inside his brain.
And Hootie's fate, after this 1966 event, was, well, it was institutionalization. Lamont Hospital.
And the way he communicated there is what really defines the nature of his psychological exile. It's key. Hootie didn't just talk gibberish.
No, he spoke only in these long passages, quoted verbatim from Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter.
A book obsessed with public shame, hidden guilt.
And when it wasn't Hawthorne, it was these incredibly obscure, complicated words from this old book, Captain Leland Fountain's Dictionary of Unknown, Strange, and Preposterous Words.
This is such a crucial detail. The words are not random at all. The narrator realized this wasn't madness in the typical sense. It was absolute terror.
Terror that forced him into this linguistic fortress.
Exactly. For instance, Hootie used the word nostomania.
Which is not a common word.
Not at all. It means a severe pathological homesickness.
And when you stop and think about that, nostomania, it's perfect. It perfectly encapsulates his condition. He wasn't just in a psych ward. He was experiencing this profound, painful longing for reality, his old life, that he knew he could never get back to.
So the memory of Mr. Obstreperous is what finally pushes the narrator to confront what really caused Hootie's paralysis, that closed-off layer of reality from 1966.
So let's lay out the players. Who are the 5 friends, and who are these invading forces that turned their senior year into a total catastrophe?
Okay, so the core Madison group. You have the narrator, of course, and his girlfriend, who would become his wife, Lee Harwell. She was known for being incredibly sharp.
Right.
Then there's Hootie Bly, the memory guy, Jason Boats, Boatman, and Donald Dilly Olson.
And the catalysts for this whole occult experiment. That was the wandering guru, Spencer Mallon.
A figure of tremendous but, totally false charisma.
And Meredith Bright, the sophisticated, beautiful astrologer who basically supplied the technical timing for the whole thing.
But the really toxic elements, the figures who represented the arrival of true inherent wickedness.
That would be Keith Hayward.
Described just bluntly as a sick, evil child and a killer in the making, and his friend Brett Millstrap.
So you have this seemingly innocent high school group just looking for some excitement in 1966, and they're just fundamentally vulnerable to the forces these other people represent.
That dynamic of vulnerability is exactly where we have to start our deep dive.
When you really look at the group dynamic boats, Dilly, Eel, Hootie, and you ask, okay, why did they fall under the spell of this guy, Spencer Mallon? The answer, it consistently points back to the damage from their families, specifically what the narrator calls the bad news dads.
It really seems like that was Mallon's screening criteria for followers. He was looking for the emotionally wounded.
Absolutely. Mallon, this peripatetic wisdom merchant,
Yeah.
he was like perfectly engineered to appeal to the adventurous, yes, but more importantly to these deeply wounded kids who were just searching for an escape or a replacement authority figure.
You take Jason Boats, boatman, his father, a boat builder, he just walked out.
Just gone.
Gone. Deserted the family for a 20-year-old apprentice. And this wasn't some slow, drawn-out thing. It was a sudden, devastating void in their lives.
And the consequences were immediate. You could see them. His mother, Shirley, whose drinking problem had been, what, slight?
Yeah, slight. It escalated into full-blown alcohol dependency. The narrator remembers her drinking beer with breakfast, passing out before 9 p.m. So Boats grew up just steeped in the emotional wreckage of that abandonment. A teenager looking for stability, for meaning. Of course he'd gravitate toward someone promising some kind of transformative purpose.
Then you have Donald Dilly Olson. He wasn't just dealing with family disappointment. He was in despair about his future.
Right. His parents just flat out refused to pay for college. They basically said their dearest wish was that he would just leave home.
So Dilly was completely adrift. And to make it worse, he was medically unfit for the Vietnam Draft of 1Y status, faulty heart valve.
So he can't serve, he can't afford college, his parents want him gone, he's just desperately searching for a cause.
And he found a substitute one, sort of, trying to blend in with the anti-war protests on the UW campus.
Which is where the whole Madison group spent a lot of their time, right? Not just protesting, but trying to meet college girls and find some kind of belonging outside of their high school world.
And into that vacuum walks Spencer Mallon, promising this revolutionary new kind of meaning.
And Mallon's pitch it was perfectly tailored to the revolutionary zeitgeist of the 1960s. He promised an end to time and a new apocalypse.
But here's where the sources show this really strange honesty in his con. Mallon openly admitted that this transformation, it might only last a moment or two.
Or just be purely mental of fresh vision.
Right. He talked about deep occult knowledge. He's citing the Tibetan Book of the Dead, ancient magic.
And the story he used to establish his esoteric authority, it's notorious in this account.
Oh, the hand story.
The hand story. He claimed to have seen a man sever another man's hand twice in a Tibetan bar, and that he had come all the way to Madison specifically to explain the meaning of that horrifying sign.
That's the part that just sounds like such obvious, theatrical nonsense. Did the narrator, looking back, ever challenge that? It seems so unbelievable, so designed to just instantly establish him as this guy who operates outside the normal rules.
He absolutely challenges it. The narrator, who says he was raised in a reasonable home, he always saw Mallon's whole philosophy as claptrap.
But for his friends.
For his wounded, searching friends, Hootie and the Eel especially, Mallon's words sounded like music with meaning flowing through it. To them, the unbelievable story was proof of his enlightenment, not his fraud.
And Mallon completely exploited that whole non-possessive vibe of the era. He'd assert that everything is everything.
Which is a very convenient philosophy to justify acting like a total predator.
Taking free meals, demanding his followers stuff, sleeping with their girlfriends. He just used spiritual authority as a cloak for simple theft and sexual exploitation.
And the narrator, he refused to participate in these gatherings. He missed the initial rites, the second seance they held at Hayward and Millstrap's apartment.
And this skepticism, it cost him.
It cost him dearly with the Eel. She drew a line in the sand. She felt he lacked a crucial degree of respect for what they were trying to do, and so she excluded him from the core of the group's search for transcendence.
And that exclusion is maybe what saved his sanity in the end. But what really solidified their direction was Meredith Bright.
Right. She was the one who added this layer of, astrological authority to Mallon's chaos.
Meredith was really invested in the esoteric arts. She was instantly enchanted by Hootie, who was a Cancer, and the Eel, a Taurus.
She saw them and immediately recognized them as fulfilling the requirements for some larger cosmic alignment she was looking for.
And then she creates this detailed astrological chart, all based on the precise time of their first meeting at the La Bella Capri restaurant.
Which is just wild.
It is. And this chart, she declares with absolute confidence, determined the optimal time and date for the transformative event, 7:20 p.m. Sunday, October 16th, 1966.
And Mallon, even though he was reportedly kind of uneasy about relying just on astrology, he deferred to her confidence.
He shouldn't have. That precise calculation dictated by the stars in a cafe meeting would end up being catastrophic when real-world delays threw the timing off completely.
Okay, so we've established the psychological vulnerability, the occult ambition. Now we have to introduce the element of pure, inherited criminality that infiltrated this group. Keith Hayward.
This is where the narrative really shifts from, reckless experimentation to something truly chilling.
Hayward, a fraternity boy, Millstrap's roommate. He was the toxic component. He just represented inherent evil.
The narrator's friend, Dill Olson, years later, he had this vivid memory of seeing Hayward in a locked shed.
Talking to a knife. And singing to it.
I mean, that's not just dark. That suggests a deep solitary pathology, a communion with violence.
And his enjoyment of violence was unnerving to everyone else. He was noticeably invigorated, he was perkier, almost attractive when he was watching that fierce police and student brawl on the UW campus.
He wasn't protesting, he was just enjoying the pure spectacle of aggression.
Exactly. And this inherent darkness, this killer-in-the-making persona, you can trace it directly through his family history.
Which leads us to Detective George Cooper's detailed memoir. Cooper was the man who spent his career trying to pin the Milwaukee Ladykiller murders on Keith's uncle, Tillman Hayward.
Cooper, who the source material describes as a hard-nosed, suspicious, tough old bastard, he suspected Tillman for years. But he didn't have the smoking gun.
Right. And his method wasn't some brilliant flash of intuition. It was just painstaking, tedious cross-referencing of tiny details.
That's what makes Cooper's pursuit so fascinating. We're talking about cross-referencing train and plane arrival and departure records from Columbus, Ohio and Milwaukee.
Meticulously aligning them with the exact dates of the Ladykiller homicides.
And Cooper found that Tillman Hayward consistently arrived in Milwaukee 2 days before 3 of the murders and left a day or two after.
That is not a coincidence. That suggests a pattern of calculated, planned violence.
For Cooper, this pointed to an undeniable connection, and he developed this chilling theory that Keith was subject to a direct genetic transmission of a dreadful psychopathology.
He called Tillman and Keith the two dark stars.
It's a really disturbing idea that evil can be inherited, passed down just like a physical trait.
And the sources give a specific, horrifying anecdote of this mentorship that Cooper actually witnessed. Through binoculars, Cooper watched Tillman Hayward across the street from young Keith's house.
And he's handing the 11 or 12-year-old Keith a large ball of keys.
Cooper didn't see that as a harmless gesture. He interpreted it as Tillman offering his nephew a symbolic solution, the key to a private room, a dark sanctuary.
And that room, they believe, was the basement of an abandoned building 5 blocks from Keith's house, where the young boy had already started killing and dismembering small animals.
Specifically, neighborhood cats.
Yeah, that image, the exchange of keys, the acceptance of this symbolic solution to a private room of violence, that's what finally chilled Detective Cooper to the bone.
He was known for being stoic, but this is what forced him to actually use the word evil. He saw Keith as a junior version of Till, just inheriting this mantle of violence before he was even a man.
And Cooper, for all his meticulous work, he never formally arrested Tillman for the Ladykiller murders.
But Tillman did meet a violent end.
He did. He was shot and killed behind the open-hand bar, which Cooper recognized as the same place Tillman had picked up a young woman he was probably using for an alibi during a previous murder.
And Cooper was put on Tillman's murder case. A man named Terry eventually confessed to the killing.
But Cooper, he felt that a terrible kind of justice had already been served, outside the law.
So he just took Terry's gun.
Threw it into the Milwaukee River and never officially solved the case. His singular focus shifted entirely to the living dark star, Keith Hayward, to make sure Keith never fulfilled that violent inherited potential.
It's a deeply unsettling intersection of official crime and, metaphysical evil, and it's all converging on this one group of Madison teenagers.
So with the stage set, Mallon providing the occult method, Meredith the timing, and Hayward the inherent wickedness, the event was slated for October 16, 1966.
But first, there was the rehearsal the day before. The group went to this agronomy meadow at the end of Glasshouse Road and painted a white circle on the ground.
And this first trip out there immediately introduced the first sign that something non-human was involved.
This is where Hootie, with his unique perception, first started seeing the invisible agents.
He described them as humane, upright dogs wearing these outdated human clothes like Norfolk jackets and Homburgs.
Like the dogs in that Coolidge painting, A Friend in Need. The one with the dogs playing poker.
Exactly like that. But Hootie's dogs were melancholy, they were irritable, and they seemed to be waiting for Mallon to start his ceremony.
But when the main event arrived on the 16th, that meticulous timing Meredith had calculated was immediately thrown off.
Yeah. Mallon and the friends were delayed by a ferocious police riot near the UW campus centered on anti-war protesters.
And they were forced to shelter behind a concrete wall, and they witnessed this stunning chaos.
The eel perceived this chaos so vividly. She described not just the police violence, the debris being thrown, the brutal arrests, but also the spirits of dead soldiers joining the protests.
Angry that their lives had been stolen by the very conflict the students were opposing.
Meanwhile, Keith Hayward, he's in his element. While everyone else is terrified or overwhelmed, Hayward is exhilarated by the carnage, just jigging in place, fueled by the spectacle.
And even after they escaped the riot, the trauma wasn't over. As they're walking toward the meadow down this notorious Troll Road, Glasshouse Road,
Lined with scuzzy businesses like Rudy's Tattoos and Weapons Sale or Rent,
they encounter a deeply personal crisis.
the eel's drunken father, Carl Truax, appears outside a place called the House of Correction, and he's screaming abuse at his daughter, threatening to violently injure the eel, promising to leave her black and blue.
And Mallon had to step in.
Right, Mallon had to assert himself to force the drunken man away.
You have to imagine that intense humiliation and terror layered on top of the high-stress environment of the riot, all right before they're supposed to do this occult rite.
By the time they finally got to the agronomy meadow, it was past 8:30 p.m. Meredith's calculated astrological window had slammed shut.
Meredith, she's visibly distressed. She warns Mallon the conditions are grim.
But Mallon, blinded by his own vanity and determination, just dismisses her. He says, "We'll open another one." He was going to proceed no matter what.
So Mallon starts chanting in Latin inside the white circle, trying to force this transformation despite the terrible timing.
And the atmosphere tightens immediately. The sensory onslaught begins. Meredith, the astrologer, she smelled this raw, hot, sweet, sexual combination of odors.
Crushed mandarin oranges, habanero peppers, new blood, sweat, and semen. A horrifying, visceral mixture.
And for Hootie, who's holding his invisible candle, the experience was visual and just overwhelmingly terrifying. He felt the atmosphere change. He saw the non-human dog things.
And then he saw the dark matter itself.
A small, white, agonized scarf-like thing twisting off the brown grass, escaping into their world.
Hootie was paralyzed. He was overwhelmed by pure, unadulterated terror and emotion, way beyond what his psychiatric diagnosis would later imply.
He just folded, crumpled under the psychic stress, yelling, "Farewell!" And that word, the narrator realized, that was Hootie accepting the terrible fate that had finally arrived for him, the total loss of his connection to reality.
Meredith's vision just accelerates into total surrealism. She saw the world around her transform into these violently moving dioramas, all separated by this thin, vibrating membrane.
Each scene was a chaotic world of its own. One had a greeny, whitish, naked corpse woman. Another had a bear king riding a bear. A third had a roaring queen shouting with a long stick.
All faceless, shiny silver beings in some impossible eternal conflict.
Then the climax, which happened in a literal split second. Keith Hayward, driven by his inherent depravity and dull animal lust, he breaks from the circle and sprints toward Meredith,
intending to kidnap her, to inflict some terrible private violence on her.
But at that exact microsecond, the demonic being Mallon had awakened, this terrifying, shape-shifting creature that cycled instantly between being a short King Kong, a naked old giant, and a cartoonishly purple thing.
It launched itself, not at Hayward, but toward Hootie and the eel.
And Hayward, in his terrible final act of idiocy, he intersected the creature's path. The creature seized him.
And Meredith, moments later, she watches as this monstrous figure turns slowly toward her and offers a beatific smile.
But the smile is horrific. It's undercut by the fact that the lips are red with Hayward's blood. And the monster then drops Hayward's utterly dead body, minus its head and right arm, from its massive hands.
And what about Brett Millstrap, Hayward's roommate?
He saw one of the chaotic dioramas, the Bear King's world, start to move forward to encompass them all.
Millstrap, terrified, made what Meredith later called an irrevocable decision. He peeled back a long section of that chaotic world, exposing a deep black void behind it.
And he was instantly sucked in, running hard into that chaotic reality, waving his arms for help before just vanishing from the earth forever.
Mallon had opened a door he didn't even know existed, and Millstrap was the collateral damage of that brief glimpse into an entirely different, violent reality.
The consequences were swift and total for the survivors. Hayward, hideously mutilated, dead on the spot. Millstrap, gone forever.
Spencer Mallon fled. He just disappeared immediately into the anonymity of the 60s counterculture.
And the friends. Dill Olson, tragically, became Mallon's devoted apprentice, his replacement guru. He lived a second-hand imitation of a life, wearing his master's cast-off clothes and just parroting his words.
Boats left school and became a full-time professional thief. He applied Mallon's cynical philosophy of non-possession to its absolute extreme.
Hootie was permanently committed to the psychiatric ward, where he would stay for 40 years, communicating only in coded terror.
And Lee Truax, the eel, she suffered a unique long-term affliction. Blindness that began in her early 30s, which she knew immediately was the physical consequence, the price paid for Mallon's catastrophic event in that meadow.
So the initial event might have ended in carnage, but the mystery stayed wide open for decades.
Right. And the narrator, who was excluded from the ritual, spent years piecing together these fragmented accounts, a quest that ultimately led to his breakthrough book, The Agents of Darkness, which was published in 1983.
He was driven by this complicated mix of guilt, curiosity, and maybe even jealousy of what his friends had seen, even though it had utterly destroyed them.
It was an intellectual itch he just had to scratch.
Decades after the event, the narrator reconnects with Donald Olson, Dill, who's just been released from prison.
Dill was convicted of gross indecency. It stemmed from his post-Mallon erotic occult studies, where he was trying to prolong the act like to infinity with a student.
Dill is a complete wreck. He's jumpy, paranoid, constantly checking the door, a habit he learned in the slammer.
He's still living this tired secondhand version of Mallon's life, but he provides this crucial insight into Hootie's early terror.
He recounts Hootie's frightened, fragmented memories from the psych ward years before, and he specifically confirms the presence of the dog agents Hootie saw in the meadow.
Right. Hootie described one in meticulous detail. A dog in a dark brown suit, a bow tie, and two-tone shoes, looking at him with a clear mixture of pity and contempt.
And that confirmed that Hootie's vision was shared and terrifyingly specific.
Now, here is where the story pivots from past history to this immediate, bizarre coincidence in their present-day investigation.
The narrator and Olson are traveling to Milwaukee to continue their research. Olson, who is deeply afraid of flying, booked them cheap tickets on Easy Air Flight 202.
And they get this overwhelming sense of unease, a strange internal warning compounded by a vague, staticky warning on the radio.
Which makes them change their minds at the very last minute and rent a car instead.
And the flight subsequently crashes, killing all 17 people on board.
They hear the news from Joe Rudler, a local ranting radio host, who emphasizes that two people who had booked tickets changed their minds at the last second.
Which plunges them into what the narrator calls survivor euphoria, this bizarre, almost manic feeling of bliss and relief at having escaped death by millimeters.
And this survival leads the narrator to a stunning suspicion. He later hypothesizes that someone intervened for them.
Either Spencer Mallon, acting out of a deep-seated guilt he had previously masked,
or, more likely, an agent acting on behalf of the eel who loved the narrator and wanted him spared. He figured Mallon wouldn't save him out of guilt, but only because he was married to Lee.
Their investigation then takes them to the most polished survivor of the event, Meredith Bright Walsh.
Now the surgically enhanced wife of a powerful senator who has his eyes on the presidency.
Meredith is acutely aware of the image she has to project. She is intent on protecting her husband's political ambitions above everything else.
And during their meeting, she admits she lied to the police back in 1966.
Why?
She feared the implications of being involved in a black mass or any ritual involving magic of the occult, witchcraft. That kind of history could torpedo a presidential campaign.
Right.
She confirmed the shocking brutality of Hayward's death and the horrifying, shape-shifting nature of the creature, just describing it as obscene.
But her cynicism is fully formed now. She insists the dog creatures Hootie saw were irrelevant details, and just dismisses Mallon's work as being far beyond their understanding. She's just completely detached.
In stark contrast to Meredith's polished cynicism, Hootie Bly is at the same time undergoing this astonishing recovery at Lamont Hospital.
And his improvement is attributed to the reduction in his heavy medication and the renewed persistent interest from the narrator and Olson. It basically proved that external validation was the key to unlocking his memory.
He finally moves past the stilted quotes from the Scarlet Letter and the obscure dictionary words. He achieves what he calls complete verbal freedom.
But in a really unique way, he draws on an infinity of sources. Tolkien, Jane Austen, Max Brand, you name it. A blender of text, which allows him to speak with perfect composure when he's talking about the unknown.
He credits the eel, who he calls the shiny lady with the stick, for helping him remember what he had known all along.
And then he offers his singular, most profound contribution to this whole mystery, the true nature of the entity that killed Hayward.
This detail, it demands some real time and reflection. Hooty, the boy with the infinite textual memory, he claimed the entity was not a shape-shifting physical thing, but was instead made of many, many words and sentences, hot words, boiling sentences, many, many thousands of sentences, thrashing and coiling like monstrous, endless, interconnected snakes.
What's so fascinating there is how the trauma manifested for him. For the others, it was a creature of flesh or light. For Hooty, the boy who absorbed text like water, the demonic entity was fundamentally textual.
A destructive, sentient word cloud.
It's an interpretation that speaks to the power of language and memory itself as a source of both reality and terror.
Finally, the narrator catches up with Boats Bootman, who has successfully transitioned from being a thief to running a security company. Ironically named It Takes a Thief.
And Boats recounts the exact moment his life of cynicism ended.
He was visiting this museum-like area that was dedicated to his past life of crime, a tribute to the gestural emptiness of a wire hanger, his belief that physical existence was just meaningless.
And there, wheeling overhead, he saw a beautiful, living skylark, just pouring out this ardent, unending melody.
It was a moment of profound recognition, a sudden crack in the nihilism that Mallon had fostered, and Boats realized, this painful goddamn life is full of blessings.
The presence of that one bird broke through the idea that existence was just emptiness, and that was his turning point toward decency and acceptance.
Decades after the terror, after the books and the meetings, the ultimate truth, the complete story of the dark matter and the creature's identity, finally comes from the one who paid the most personal price. The narrator's wife, Lee Truax, the eel.
She agrees to tell her full account, and she confirms she is the skylark that Boats saw and the shiny lady with the stick that Hooty remembered.
Her revelation starts with understanding Spencer Mallon's cryptic comment about the end of the classic Western chain.
Yeah.
The eel realized Mallon was predicting his own death or end. Not just that he was leaving town, he knew he had opened a door he couldn't close and that he was going to pay the price for it.
And the being that was awakened was the noonday demon.
A specific theological term for the savage demon of the second rate, the spirit of everyday evil, characterized by envy unto sickness.
This creature was supposed to stay unseen, just a background hum of malaise. But Mallon, in his vanity, forced it into physical manifestation. He let it enter their reality.
This is a crucial point for you to absorb. We are not talking about some grand satanic figure here. We're talking about the demon of mediocrity and deep resentment.
It's the kind of subtle evil that ruins live slowly, but it was magnified and forced into physical form by Mallon's ritual.
The eel then recounts her moment of psychic, temporal, and spatial transformation into the skylark, a small brown bird. This was a journey of temporary but profound spiritual richness that let her see outside the constraints of linear time.
And she saw these vivid flashes of the past and the future.
A young, sullen millstrap masturbating in a Fox Point backyard pool in 1957, proving his fate was tied to a lifetime of quiet shame. Her own father shattering a shot glass near her infant feet, the origin of her generational trauma.
But the most terrifying glimpse was the future memory. The aging boats near a marina, watching a horrifying, huge non-dog with pointed white plastic teeth that seemed to shed the moonlight of exposed bone.
Which implies that even Boat's eventual redemption is still shadowed by those dog agents Hooty saw. The evil persists in the peripherals of their lives.
After her transformation, she was transported to this strange, London-like reality where she confronted the demon, who she immediately recognized and identified as Doity Toyd, a man with a red beard and a thick New York accent.
And this conversation is the theological center of the entire memoir. We have to spend time on this core insight.
The demon explicitly stated that the opposite of love is evil.
Right. He clarifies that hate is just a small subset of love gone wrong, simple inversion. True evil, the noonday demon argued, is something else entirely.
It's the absence of everything that is life-affirming. The demon rationalized its own existence by arguing that the demonic presence is essential. It provides the tremendous temptation necessary for human stories of redemption, decency, and moral clarity to exist.
Without true evil to test them, human beings have no need for virtue.
He also confirmed the true meaning of Mallon's story about the two doors in the hotel. Mallon had asked a disciple which door to choose.
And the demon explained. Choosing either door-seeking knowledge or shunning it means you gave the tiger permission to jump. You invited catastrophe into the life of a loved one.
The story isn't about the choice, it's about the permission. You're inviting the Siamese twins of knowledge and horror into your life. The story ends, inevitably, when you open the door.
Lee also revealed this shocking crime she committed years later, a dark mirror reflecting the trauma of the meadow.
She blinded a former lover with a rock.
And this was the same man who had previously blinded her in her early 30s, the affliction rooted in Mallon's event after she tried to break up with him. He had blinded her so she couldn't look at another man.
And the eel committed this retaliatory act after a pivotal encounter. She met a woman in Rehoboth Beach who confessed to murder.
And during that confession, Lee felt an external presence join her, the dark matter, that unacknowledged being. She realized the demon's influence had remained with her, infecting her life and leading her to commit a violent retaliatory act against the man who had caused her original blindness.
Which suggests that even though the main entity was contained, the everyday evil, that envy unto sickness, had successfully attached itself to the eel, leading to a personal, terrible crime years later.
And finally, the ultimate morally complicated revelation that redefines the horror of that meadow event. Lee believes Keith Hayward intersected the creature's path and died as a sacrifice, not to save Meredith from being kidnapped.
But to save her, the eel.
And why her? Because Hayward, the sick, evil child, felt this crushing guilt over having murdered his former friend and victim, Miller, years before the 1966 ritual.
And she was the only one who truly understood that guilt. And in that ultimate moment of terror and chaos, Hayward made a final, desperate act of decency.
He was making up for Miller, she concludes. This sacrificial death, which saved the eel's life, set them free from the immediate, overwhelming influence of the demon.
It's the ultimate contradiction. The killer in the making achieved a monstrous form of redemption through his own grotesque destruction.
This deep dive began with Hootie's silent terror, and it ended with an almost unbearable amount of clarity.
Purchased at a truly catastrophic price.
We've spent this time synthesizing layers of generational trauma inherited from the bad news dads, the deep psychological pathology connecting Keith and Tillman, the mystical manipulation from Mallon and Meredith's faulty astrology,
And the theological nature of the malevolent force, the noonday demon made of coiling hot words.
The crucial takeaway, the central theme the source material offers, is the parable of knowledge. The narrator spent decades hunting for the truth, for the story, seeking the answers Mallon had carelessly promised.
But the door Mallon opened, seeking those Siamese twins of knowledge and horror, it came with a devastating cost. The ruin of 5 young lives, his wife's affliction, and Hootie's long psychiatric exile.
He got his story. He got his book, The Agents of Darkness, but only because Hayward paid for it with his life, allowing the dark matter to be contained. The survivors were set free from the immediate threat, but they were irrevocably damaged by the knowledge itself.
Which brings us to the final chilling irony for you, the listener, to consider. The survivors, Hootie, Boats, Dill, Lee, and the narrator, they are now bound forever by this catastrophic shared history, by the fact that they witnessed and survived true metaphysical evil.
They may be set free from the immediate demon, but the knowledge remains.
As the eel told him, reflecting on the internal presence of evil. You contain evil. When you open the door, you let it out.
The question is, now that they know what they contain and what they let out that terrible night in 1966, can they ever truly close that door again? Or does the search for knowledge always lead to a hidden, painful cost?
And that is where we leave you to mull over the true price of the stories you choose to pursue.